My name is Harper Whitfield, and if you had told me that my own wedding day would begin with 3 empty chairs behind me, each one belonging to someone who was supposed to love me, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's where my story starts. Standing at the altar, trying to smile, while my father sent me a message that shattered everything I thought I'd escaped. I didn't know it then, but that moment would unravel every hidden truth I had spent years trying not to see. The music drifted over the garden, soft and elegant, but it couldn't drown out the cold tug in my stomach. Late September light filtered through the willow branches, turning everything gold except the space inside my chest. I felt Evan's eyes on me, searching my face for reassurance I didn't have. Behind us, those maple chairs, reserved, polished, waiting, stood untouched, and their emptiness felt louder than the vows we were about to speak. Somewhere beneath the lace of my dress, my phone vibrated, a tiny pulse against my ribs. I didn't look. Not yet. A part of me already knew. Moments like this had a pattern, and I had lived inside that pattern for most of my life. The last time I ignored my father's call, I was 15, standing barefoot in our hallway, facing the wall for 2 hours, because I hadn't phoned home at exactly 6. The plaster was rough against my forehead, and he stood behind me the whole time, correcting my posture whenever I slouched. That memory pressed against my spine now, same cold, same tightness in my throat. Maya leaned closer. "Harper, are they stuck in traffic?" I tightened my grip on the bouquet until the stems dug into my palm. I told myself to breathe, to smile, to pretend. Guests whispered behind their programs. I heard one woman murmur, "Where's her family?" As if I couldn't possibly hear, as if having no one show up made me defective. Evan reached for my hand, warm and steady, and, "I'm here," he whispered. But the ache inside me didn't shift. When I finally slid my phone from the hidden pocket in my dress, the screen lit up with my father's name. One message, short, sharp, familiar. "You chose this life. Don't expect applause." My vision blurred. A single tear slipped down, not from joy, but from that humiliating, hollow sting that had followed me from childhood. Even on the day I vowed to start a new life, I was dragged back into the old one. The chaplain's voice rose, bright and practiced. "By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Virginia, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Applause swelled, cameras flashed, someone whistled from the back. My phone buzzed again in my hand, sharp as a slap. A second message from the same name lit the screen. "Fix it." I went cold down my spine. The reception was supposed to be the celebration, but with one text message, the night began to crumble like wet paper in my hands. By 7:30 p.m., the glass pavilion at the heart of the gardens glowed like a lantern. Golden bulbs hung in strands from the beams, catching the reflections of flowers, crystal, and the faces of people who thought this was the happiest day of my life. Music pulsed softly. Guests laughed over plates of food. The bartender shook cocktails at the back. At our little table for two, I sat straight-backed in my dress, feeling like someone had pulled my chair a few inches away from the rest of the world. Where a family table should have been, there was only a decorated gap. No father raising a glass, no mother dabbing her eyes, no sibling making an inappropriate joke. Just space, and my own awareness of it, humming like a low-grade fever. I slipped my phone from my lap, the earlier message, "Fix it," still burning at the top. A new notification waited under it. My thumb tapped almost on its own. "You owe the family $15,000. Pay it back, or deal with the consequences." The room tilted for a second. 15,000. Every emergency transfer, every "I'll pay you back, Harp, I swear," from my brother, had apparently turned into a line item on my father's ledger. Deal with the consequences. I could almost hear his voice saying it, measured, cold, like a sentence handed down. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. I hit call on the only number that still made part of me feel 6 years old. "Mom," I whispered when she answered. The clink of dishes, the murmur of a TV bled through the line. "Mom, did Dad send you?" Silence. Not even a breath. Then the call dropped. She hadn't lost the signal. She had lost her courage. Harper. I looked up. Maya stood at the edge of the dance floor, curls slightly frizzed from humidity, eyes sharper than anyone else's in the room. She glanced toward the glass doors before she reached me. Harper, there are two men outside. They're watching the door. Something's off. My stomach clenched. My father's favorite word echoed in my skull. Consequences. Before I could move, the venue manager hurried across the room, weaving between tables, his expression wrong for a wedding. No warmth, just pale urgency. He stopped beside me, bending slightly so others wouldn't hear, though I knew they would anyway. Harper, it's the police. They're asking for you, and your father is with them. My hand jerked, and the stem of my champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the concrete floor, fizz and glass exploding around my shoes as conversations faltered mid-sentence. The moment the glass doors opened and the officers stepped inside, the air in the reception hall tightened, and every unfinished wound between my father and me rose to the surface. Conversations fell off a cliff. The DJ's hand froze over the mixer, and the soft hum of the lights suddenly felt too loud. Under the golden strings of bulbs, two uniforms stepped forward, badges catching the reflection. Between them walked Doug Whitfield, chin lifted, shoulders squared like he owned the room and everyone in it. Maya's hand slid around my forearm. "Those are the guys I saw earlier," she breathed. "At the entrance. This is about you, Harp." Of course it was. My father didn't know how to enter quietly. He only knew how to march in like a verdict. He stabbed a finger in my direction, his voice booming and too familiar. "She stole $15,000 from the Whitfield Family Trust. Arrest her." Gasps spread like a ripple in still water. I could feel the weight of 100 eyes pressing into my back, measuring me, wondering if they were witnessing a scandal instead of a wedding. "Ma'am, step over here. We have some questions," the taller officer said. His badge read, Mills. His tone was firm but not hostile. The woman beside him, Park, watched Doug, not me, taking in every twitch of his jaw, every clench of his fist. For a heartbeat, the room blurred, and I was 17 again, standing at our kitchen table under the yellow glare of the ceiling light. Doug had shoved a typed statement toward me, the words, "Accept full responsibility," underlined twice. "You sign this," he'd said, voice low and dangerous, "or you'll learn what real consequences look like." I'd signed. Of course I had. Back then, I thought compliance was the only way to survive. Now, in a white dress and aching heels, something inside me refused to kneel. I inhaled slowly, the way I'd been taught before inspections, and felt my spine straighten. "I haven't stolen anything," I said, turning to Mills, "but I do have documentation." My thumb moved with a calmness I didn't quite understand. I opened my banking app, then the folder I'd labeled in a moment of grim humor. Family business. First, the family trust statements. No withdrawal for $15,000 anywhere. Then, screenshots of texts. Fund Caleb's wedding. You owe the family. You owe us $15,000. Below that, my bank record showing a single transfer. $100, memo line. Best wishes. Finally, the email app, with the message sent at 3:12 p.m. to my Navy Reserve account, every screenshot attached, time-stamped before the ceremony even began. I held the phone out. "Detective, I documented everything." Officer Park leaned in, eyes narrowing in concentration. "These timestamps match," she said. "She sent a backup before the ceremony." A murmur rose from the crowd. I watched the color drain from Doug's face, his confident mask slipping at the edges. Mills pulled a folded page from his pocket and compared it to what he'd just seen. "Sir," he addressed my father, voice cooling, "yesterday you filed a complaint with Navy Reserve HR stating your daughter stole family funds." He tapped another form on his clipboard. "But this report claims the theft occurred tonight." A low sound of surprise rolled through the hall. Someone whispered, "Yesterday?" Another voice muttered, He set this up. Doug's composure shattered. She thinks she's better than this family, he roared, spit catching at the corner of his mouth. She puts on a uniform and suddenly she's too good to pay back what she owes. I met his eyes and for the first time didn't flinch. No, Dad, I just stopped being afraid of you. Mills slid the paper back into his pocket and straightened. Ma'am, you are not under investigation. Sir, making a false report is a serious matter. Doug glanced around the room, searching for an ally. No one stepped forward. Evan stood just behind my shoulder, steady as a wall. Maya's phone was still raised, recording silently. Every face that had once greeted him as a respected man now looked away or stared back with something close to disgust. His jaw clenched, the muscle in his cheek jumping. He leaned in just enough for me to see the fury burning behind his pupils. You'll regret this, Harper. At 5:14 a.m., when Pastor Cole called and said my father had collapsed, I felt something ancient inside me crack. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything we had never said. I swung my legs out of bed before my brain caught up. The room was dark, the kind of gray that belongs to airports and bad news. Beside me, Evan blinked awake as I pressed the phone to my ear. Harper, it's your father, Pastor Cole said, voice worn at the edges. It doesn't look good. You should come. By the time he finished, I already knew I was going. On the drive to Riverside Hospital, the streets of early October were almost empty, traffic lights flipping uselessly between red and green. I gripped the steering wheel until my fingers hurt, and wondered, not for the first time, why the first time my father truly needed me had to arrive when his whole kingdom was collapsing. ICU 214 smelled like alcohol wipes and burned-out nights. White light washed the color out of everything. Machines clicked and sighed, the monitor's soft beeping ticking off seconds we would never get back. My mother sat outside the door, shoulders caved inward, hands knotted in the strap of her purse. He just went to sleep in the chair, she whispered when she saw me. They said it was his heart. She didn't quite meet my eyes, as if afraid of what she might see there. I stepped into the room. Doug lay propped up, skin slack, hair flattened against the pillow. For the first time in my life, he looked small. Pastor Cole stood near the foot of the bed, giving me a nod and quietly shifting aside. My father's eyelids fluttered. When he focused on me, there was a flicker of the old iron behind his gaze, dulled now by pain and tubes. Did you come to watch me die? He rasped. I moved closer, stopping where I could feel the warmth of his breath, but not smell the antiseptic on his skin. I came because I won't let fear write the last page, I said. The words surprised me with how steady they sounded. His mouth twitched, somewhere between a grimace and a smile. After a long, rattling breath, he managed, I didn't know how to love you when you stopped obeying me. The sentence landed like a blow straight to my chest. Years of commands and cold shoulders crowded in at once. Out in the hallway, I heard two nurses murmuring. Is she the daughter he called the police on? Yeah. Folks at church say he really crossed a line. For a man who worshipped his own reputation, having his sins whispered over the ICU tile felt like the final crack in his mask. His hand lifted, trembling. I hesitated, then let his fingers close weakly around mine. I made those reports because I felt you slipping away, he muttered, breaths breaking. And I didn't know any other way to keep you close. I didn't cry. The tears burned, but they stayed where they were. I leaned in just enough for him to hear me. Control is not love, Dad. His eyes glossed with moisture. One tear slid sideways toward his ear as his chest rose and fell in shorter, shallower motions. He drew in a fragile breath. Harper, I'm proud of you. Always was. It was clumsy and late, and everything I had starved for as a child. The monitor's rhythm began to wobble, space stretching between the beeps. My mother crept in, one hand over her mouth, standing on the opposite side of the bed like she was afraid to disturb the air. Pastor Cole moved closer, lips moving in a quiet prayer I couldn't quite hear. The sound changed. The beeps blurred into one long, unbroken tone. Janet's sob tore out of her as if someone had cut a rope. She grabbed the side rail, shoulders shaking. Nurses rushed past me toward the bed, but none of them reached for the volume knob. The note just went on. A flat, relentless beep. I stood perfectly still, my father's cooling hand still in mine, as Pastor Cole stepped to my side and set his palm gently on my shoulder. Your father left something for you. A month after my father's funeral, on a cold December morning, I found a small brown envelope resting on my doorstep, addressed to me in the handwriting I had spent my whole childhood trying to decipher. The air bit at my ankles through my pajama pants as I sat on the front step, the wood chilled through by the Norfolk winter. For a moment, I just held the envelope, tracing the shaky letters of my name. Then I slid a finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single sheet, creased down the middle. The ink wavered, but the words were unmistakably his. Harper, if I had another chance, I'd learn to speak to you without turning it into a contest. You didn't ruin our family. You lived through what I didn't know how to mend. I was proud of you, quiet, stubborn, and too late to admit it. Dad. My throat tightened. I pressed the paper against my chest and let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding since the day 3 chairs sat empty behind me at the altar. They were still empty, but they no longer felt like a verdict, just a fact. My mind drifted back to the funeral a few weeks earlier at St. Andrew. Maybe 20 people had come. Most of them knew him more as an usher than as a father. Somewhere behind me, someone had murmured, "Calling the cops on your own kid? What a tragedy." I'd stood by the casket and whispered, "You taught me to stand straight. Now I'm learning how to stand on my own." Evan's hand had slid into mine from behind, steady and wordless. After the service, my mother had approached, eyes swollen, fingers twisting a damp tissue. "Your father, he wanted peace," she'd said. "I don't know how to do this alone." "We don't have to rush anything," I'd answered. It was the first time I'd spoken to her without anger sitting in the front row. That afternoon, I drove to Virginia Beach with the letter folded in my pocket. The sky was pale, the water steel blue, waves rolling in calm, even strokes. I took out our wedding photo, the one with the 3 empty chairs framed perfectly behind my veil. Carefully, I tore along the edge until only Evan and I remained, faces turned toward each other, everything else, the chairs, the absence, the performance, falling away in my hands. I let the strip with the chairs flutter into the trash can by the boardwalk. "Empty seats don't decide my story anymore," I said softly. "Only the ones who stay." Evan slipped an arm around my shoulders. "You ready to start the next chapter?" I watched the horizon breathe in and out. I think peace finally figured out where I live. My phone buzzed. A message from Pastor Cole. "Your mom would like to visit sometime. Only if you're ready." I smiled, pocketed the phone, and listened to the hush of the surf. Peace didn't crash in like thunder. It arrived more like these waves, steady, patient, willing to try again. Later, back home, another notification lit the screen. This time it was from my mother. "Harper, could we meet for coffee soon? No pressure, I just want to see you." I closed my eyes, feeling the old fear and the new softness collide in my chest, and for once, they didn't fight. Maybe it's time. Sometimes I wonder how many of you watching have carried a wound like mine, a wound shaped like a parent who loved you with control instead of tenderness. If my story spoke to you, I hope you'll stand with me. Leave me a comment. Tell me what part of my journey hit closest to your heart. And if you've ever been made to feel small, here's my advice. Your worth is not decided by the people who failed to see it. Healing isn't forgetting. It's choosing yourself every day, even when your past tries to pull you back.